A couple weeks ago, we started this series that's simply called Starting Off Right. And really, guys, this school year, we want this to be a year where things start off right. Because here's what I'm convinced of. I am convinced that if just the people that attend on Sunday nights, if just you guys will take serious the call to step into your schools and step into your friendship circles and step into the places where you have influence among your peers and among your friends, the places where God has already placed you. And if you will share God's love in those places, I'm convinced that just this group right here will drastically change the future for our community. Will drastically change the future for the lives of the people that we come into contact with now. That this is an intersecting point when you are in middle school and high school. This is an intersecting point where your life is coming to meet with other people, and we have an opportunity to forever change the course that they are headed. And so the goal with this series is simply to say, let's do this. Let's start the school year off right. Let's be a people, let's be a group that step into the places where we have influence, and let's change people's lives for Jesus. And so we started a couple weeks ago, and we simply looked at this idea that if we want to start off right, that we have to realize and understand who God is, that God is love, and that God's love means that He loves us wildly. And we have to take that personally, and we have to just understand that deep in our souls, that we are loved, that you are loved, that the God that spoke all of these bugs that we hear in the background into existence, the God that created all these giant trees to grow, that created the stars in the galaxy and created fire, is a God that looks inside you and sees your heart and your soul and your personality, and He is madly in love with you. And I don't know if you feel that love very often from people around you. Some of you do, some of you don't, but the truth is, whether you feel that love from people in your life or not, the truth is there is a God of this universe that is madly in love with you. And so we start there. We start with understanding who God is, that He is love and that He loves us. And then last week we talked about how, moving on from there, the way that we share Jesus with others is to share that love with other people. That it's not about having the right things to say, and it's not about memorizing all the right scriptures. It's about going out in the places and the things that we love and sharing God's love in the midst of doing the things that we already love to do. And so it's about going out and performing well in sports and in music. It's about going out and creating art that draws people in. It's about going out and building friendships that are deep and meaningful. And through those relationships and those things that we do well, God brings people into our lives, and our lives intersect with people. And those intersections have an opportunity to change people's lives. And when we do that, we show Christ's love to those people. And we've overcomplicated the process. It's not about having the right things to say. It's about simply going out and showing love. And tonight, we're going to talk about simply being patient as we watch people's lives change. We're going to talk about simply being patient when we watch people's lives change. We are a people of immediacy. We love things happening immediately. When I came out and I started this fire tonight, there were a few different ways I could have started the fire. Ty, are you listening? I could have taken a couple sticks and I could have rubbed them together until the fire started, but that would have taken forever, right? And so I did not take a couple sticks and rub the fire together. I could have taken some matches. I have some matches around here somewhere. And I could have wadded up some paper.
Here beside you.
And lit, thank you. and lit the paper on fire, and then thrown some small sticks and some brush and some leaves and let that burn, and then thrown some larger sticks on that and let that burn, and slowly started the fire that way. But I didn't do that either. I grabbed one of these because I am a person of immediacy. And I lit this on fire, and this fire starter burned, and it burned hot, and I was able to just put wood on the fire, and it lit. Because we are a people that love immediacy. And we assume that we have been a people that are people of immediacy, and that's a pretty recent thing. We assume that it's, the age of microwaves and the internet and cars and Instapots. But the truth is that we have always been, as a human race, a people of immediacy. We have always been a people of immediacy. And we love for things to happen immediately. In 1 Corinthians chapter 3, I want to make sure I don't misquote this, but in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, there is somewhat of a quarrel going on in the church. There are some people in the church of Corinth that are saying, I follow Paul. And there are some people in the church of Corinth that are saying, I follow Apollos. And these people are saying, all right, Paul is the one that changed my life. Paul is the one that moment I decided to believe in Jesus, like he's the one that led me to Jesus. And some people are saying, no, it's Apollos. Apollos is better because he's the one that changed my life. He's the one that led me to Jesus. He's the one that helps me grow and helps me become the person that I am today. And so there's this battle going on. And really what it boils down to, and what we find true about even our faith, is that we love boiling down our faith to moments of immediacy. Think about it. We love talking about our faith and saying, I remember the moment that I got baptized. It changed everything. I remember the moment, and I've told you guys this before, I remember the moment that I decided to go into ministry and it altered the course of my life. I remember the moment that I took a huge step of faith and I decided to step out and grow. And so even in our faith, we tend to boil things down to this moment of immediacy. We have always been a human race that loves immediacy. And Paul addresses this to the people of Corinth in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 4 through 9. He says this, for when one says, I follow Paul, and another says, I follow Apollos, are you not being merely human? What then is Apollos, and what is Paul? Servants through whom you believed, as the Lord assigned to each. I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave growth. So neither he who plants nor he who waters, but only God who gives the growth. He who plants and he who waters are one, and each will receive his wages according to his labor. For we are God's fellow workers. You are God's field, God's building. And so Paul says something really, really important here. And it's something that as we step into this school year and we think about impacting people for Jesus Christ, I think it's something that we really have to take a look at and something we really have to try to grasp. He says our faith is not a faith of immediacy. It's not something that happens immediately. Paul is very clear in this. Paul says, listen, I came into your life and I planted a seed. And then I left. And then Apollos came in and he watered that seed. And at the end of the day, it was God that made the seed grow. Paul says our faith is not boiled down to just moments of immediacy. See, when we tend to boil down our faith to moments of immediacy, we tend to want to share God's love with our friends, and for our friends to go, wow, you're right. I'm going to turn my whole life around. And we expect to see these immediate, giant changes in our friends' lives. But if you think back to your own faith, and you're really, really honest with yourself, and what Paul is saying here is that often our faith is not immediate. Our faith takes time. It takes energy. It takes growth that is brought by God. And we tend to boil down our faith into these moments, and it really affects the way that we share our faith with our friends. Because the truth of the matter is that we expect one conversation to change everything. We expect one act of love to change everything. And it's possible that this year you will be the one that gets to see the massive growth in your friends' lives. But I want to say this, more often than not, we find ourselves in our own faith and our friends in between the times of immediate change. In our faith, more often than not, we find ourselves and our friends in between those times of immediate change. And so what happens is we find ourselves investing in a friend, and we're cultivating their soul, we're planting the seed in their life, and that may be all God has us do. And here's the deal, we may never see the change that happens in their life, but we're making a difference, and they may be in between times of immediate change. And so we plant the seed, and God works that seed, and he grows that person, he grows that person, he grows that person. And 5 years from now, they have that immediate change where they take that giant step of faith. But if we don't plant the seed, it doesn't happen 5 years from now. You see, we get so discouraged when we don't see change. But here's what I'm convinced of. Every single time that we share our faith, every single time that we share God's love, God is changing a person's life. Every single time, God is changing a person's life. And so even when we don't see immediate change, we shouldn't get discouraged. We should recognize that that person is just in the middle of a cultivation time where they are growing. I was curious this week, thinking about being out here with fire. I like fire. And I've always wondered how to, and some of you may already know this, how to start a fire using only sticks. Does anybody know how to do that already? All right. Jack does, kind of. Okay. Jack does. So here's what I learned. There are two ways you can do it. One way is easier than another, but this was the easiest way. So it helps if you have soft wood, and I recognize this is not a soft wood piece of wood. And they both have to be the same type of wood. But what you do is you get a larger log, and you have to flatten the side of it, and then create a groove in that flat side that's about 8 inches long. And you put it on a stick like that. And then you take another piece, and you flatten it into like a little knife-looking thing, and at a 45-degree angle, you just rub it back and forth on this flat piece. Now, at first, and I'm not going to do it tonight because I don't have a groove. At first, you don't have to apply a whole lot of pressure. You just go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And you'll start to feel some heat from the friction. And at that point, you'll get a little bit more pressure on it, and you'll keep going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and you'll start to see some smoke. And at that point, you'll apply even more pressure, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, until you get some really thick smoke. Now, here's what I always assumed. I always assumed that when you rub two pieces of stick together, they started a fire. That makes sense, right? You rub two pieces of stick together, they start a fire, you throw stuff on the fire. But that's not what happens. When you start a fire with only sticks, no matter how you do it, your ultimate goal, you all right? Smoke get in your eyes?
It got my eyes.
When you start a fire with sticks, your ultimate goal is to do nothing more than create an ember in this big log. That's it. That's all you want to do. Create an ember, because this big log and this stick right here are not going to catch fire. You just want to. It's not supposed to rain, I don't think.
I just checked. You're good.
It feels good looking.
But it's pretty
Oh, it's hot outside. It's hot.
Okay. All right. So, these are not going to catch fire. What's going to happen is there's going to be a tiny ember that forms in this big log. And what you have to do is you have to take that ember and very carefully and very cautiously dump it into some tinder of some dry leaves or some really small fibrous material and get that to catch on fire. And then throw small sticks on that to get your fire bigger. Now, here's why I talk about that, because A, I love fire. I love talking about fire and how to start fire. But B is this. God may not have you this year be the person in your friend's life that dumps the ember into the timber and starts the fire. Let me say that again. God may not have you this year be the person that dumps the ember, all right, into the tinder and start the fire. God may have you just be the person that starts the friction of their faith. God may just have you be the person that continues that faith that someone else started last year. God may have you be the person that is just making the ember. But the truth of the matter is, like Paul says in 1 Corinthians, Paul planted the seed. If no one ever plants the seed never grows. If no one ever starts the friction to create heat, the fire never burns. So I want to encourage you guys. I see you guys go out and I see you share your faith. I see you share the love of Christ. I see you using your gifts. I see you doing kingdom work. Don't stop that. Don't give up. Because we have to be patient as people change. It takes a while for people to change. And God is using you. God is using you in mighty and powerful ways. And here's what I'm convinced of. If we don't give up, if we continue to create the ember, if we continue to plant the seed, you guys, I can guarantee that when we leave this life 80 years from now and we step into the gates of heaven, there are going to be people that come up to you and say, you never knew this because we were just in middle school and high school, but 40 years later, you started something in me that God grew into something incredible. So don't stop. Don't give up. Paul says, I planted the seed, Apollos watered the seed, but the truth of the matter is, God's the one that makes it grow. God's the one that steps up and makes it grow. God is the one that really changes their hearts. All we have to do is go out and show people who God is. All we have to do is go and show His love, and show His grace, and show His favor, and show that He is the one that can change their life. And we do that by doing the things that God has already gifted us to do. We do that through the things that we love. We do that through the things that we are passionate about. We do that through the things that we are talented at. God has already gifted us. He's already set us up. And this year, God is going to open up some doors for you to change people's lives. He's already doing it. I hope that you have already experienced God opening up some doors where you are having an opportunity to express Christ's love to someone else. God is going to continue to do that this year. And I want to ask you that you continue to express Christ's love, because you are drastically changing people's lives. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 6, I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave growth. Every week I give a practical challenge, and so this week, here's my practical challenge. Similar to last week's, I want you to just continue to pray that God would open up doors for you. Continue to pray that God would open up doors for you to change people's lives. Even when you don't see the change, even though you may never see the change until you get to heaven, that God would use you to change people's lives. Because God has invited us into this incredible story where He wants to use us as a part of the way that He is changing the world. You guys are a part of that. So continue to go out and do that. Continue to go out and love people. Continue to go out and start an ember that someday will turn into a fire for Christ for someone. Continue to go out and plant seeds that will someday grow into fruit. Because God, in every act that you do for Him, is helping someone grow. Let me pray, and then the band can come on up. God, thank you so much for tonight. Thank you for the chance to be here. Thank you for the breeze. Thank you for the beautiful weather. God, thank you for these students and the way that you are using them in mighty and powerful ways. And I pray that you would continue to use them. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Amen.